Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be a bit of an unplanned thing. Just going to move something. Sorry about that. Had to move a bit of furniture. There are a number of things that you can see that are different here. One is there's a new work thingy. And that is because, where's the hell is the camera going? There, sorry about this. Balls. Not as I intended, but hey ho. Yes, there's a new working thingy, and that is because, well, the one that I've got here, as you can probably see, is tucked under various pieces of furniture. So it makes it very difficult to actually pick up and move and clean. So this is a new one, which I've cut around various bits and pieces, so as and when this gets dirty, I can actually pick it up and move it and clean it and all the rest of that good stuff. The other thing that you've probably noticed is there's been quite a change in the ZX81 that you've seen me working on for the last who knows how long. The last 3 videos, in fact. I was trying to put that in forward in time and then my brain went, bleh? Time? What's that? And that is because something has gone terribly wrong. Exactly what's gone wrong, I don't know. But I thought that this would be an ideal opportunity to show you some of the various diagnostic tricks that can be used. If I actually power this on, you can see what's going on. The screen is all over the shop, and yeah, it's not a very healthy ZX81 at the moment. And as you can see, various things have been changed on this. This is a replacement. Let's get down here. There. See if I can get this better. I should be able to. This is a replacement Ferranti chip. It is something that someone in New Zealand has created to emulate the Ferranti chip, because, as you probably know, the chip itself was custom designed and built for Sinclair for the ZX81. So when they stopped producing the ZX81, they stopped producing this chip. Also, you'll notice that this is actually an EEPROM with another EEPROM blown on it to replace the EEPROM that's there. You'll notice that this is a brand new Z80 processor to replace the original one. Now you can get new processors. They run faster, but they will work perfectly happily at a slower clock speed. And you'll also notice that this is actually a vintage RAM chip which has been soldered in place of the ZX81 modern RAM chip. And because of that, I've also taken out the socket for the capacitor, because this is now operating at where it should do. So we've got all new components in here, and the damn thing is still not working. And it's a hell of a mystery as to why this is. And I thought I'd make a video about it, about going through some of the various things that have been gone through to diagnose what's actually going on. And yeah, it is a bit of a mystery, but in order to be able to do things like testing the chips, you need to know roughly what they're going to be doing. And we have, in this case, somebody's already drawn up a document over what you should find on each of the pins. So, pulse high, a frequency, low, OC, right. So basically we know roughly what we should be finding on the pins, and we know that because we know the makeup of the processor itself. Now we're going to focus on the ULA, and this is roughly what we're dealing with. I'll just bring this a bit further up. Boom, so you can see a bit more of this. And you can see each of the pins and what they do. Like this one, pin 40, we're expecting to be high at 5 volts and not moving. These are address lines, so we would expect them to be pulsing. These are the RAM and ROM selects, so this is when it would specify whether it's reading from RAM or ROM. It would wake up the appropriate chips. You have a clock signal here. You have various other bits and pieces like ground. We would expect that always to be low. We'd expect the data lines to be pulsing with the data that's going between the RAM, ROM and the ULA and also the CPU. So we can guess pretty much how these are supposed to be behaving. And we can probe these relatively easily. Now, there is a piece of equipment known as a logic probe, and this is the LP1. I think this costs about £10 thereabouts on Fleabay, and you can probably get it for about less if you get the same thing without the case. But personally, I decided to go for the case, just to make it a bit safer, so I'm not handling a bare circuit board. So you attach it to the positive and negative on the actual system that you're testing. You can't actually test it, put it to an outside power supply, because it needs this to reference what you're probing. Now actually, the other thing that I'm going to do here is replace this with the actual Ferranti, which will make it slightly easier to test. So I know that there's a secondary bar under there, so I'm lifting it at that bar. So we're going to remove this. Whoops, not exactly the most delicate of operators. And we're actually going to put the proper Ferranti back in there. Not going to be the easiest of things, but it will go in. It should go in. It's been back and forth like you would not believe, but hey ho. Oh, come on. Why are you giving me this grief? Whoops, something just dropped. That's metallic, and it dropped on something other that I do not want it to drop on. So this device just helps align the pins for it to go in the socket. So it should go in the socket. Hint, hint. Take the hint, machine. Yeah, that's the original Ferranti back in the socket, and if I fire it on, you'll see that it's giving the same error that it did with the VL. Ooh, it's just gone white. Just gone white, and I think that would actually, you'd see this later. But if I turn it off and turn it back on again, you would probably see exactly the same thing again. Oh, hey ho. Good stuff, good stuff. So anyway, so we have this logic tester. So I'm going to attach that to 5 volts there. I'm going to make sure I don't cross onto the negative, and I'm going to attach that to the negative. So now when I power up the board, this probe will be live, and it will tell me various things about what's going on. One of them is the 5 volts, and you can see that that is always high. 0 volts is on which pin? It is on 34, so that's 40, 39, 38, 37, 36, 35, 34. And that is low. So that's telling me it's always low. If we have a look at some of the address pins, like 39 is an address pin, as you can see, that is pulsing. So it's giving, it's pulsing between up and down. If we find an oscillator, which is 35, 39, 38, 37, 36, 35, 35, oh, yeah, 35 is high. It's too high for the logic pulse to actually work out. And one of the things that I'm going to show you now is actually a data line. That looks to the logic as if it's pulsing. So does that data line. So does that data line. In theory, it looks like it's pulsing, but if we have a look at the ROM and RAM select, that's 13 and 12. Whoops. Nudge at the power there. That caused a bit of a reset. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13. That's pulsing. So that is the Ferranti commanding access to the ROM. Now we would also expect it to be commanding access to the RAM, but it's not. It's at 0. It's what the hell? Why? It's not asking for anything from the RAM, and I would expect that to be pulsing like the ROM. So something's wrong here. But then comes the question, what? So what we're using the testing for is to find out the symptoms. We can find out the symptoms of what's not behaving. The one thing we can't find out is why, the cause. So we can only tell what's wrong. We can't tell actually what's causing it. So I'm just going to switch this off for a moment and disconnect this, because I have something else attached, which is an oscilloscope. And let's just turn this back on again. And right, my oscilloscope. Let's just move things around a little. No, I don't want the scale, I want the position. I still want that at 1 volt. Now the oscilloscope goes a bit further. You can consider it like a multimeter, but it goes against time. So it records voltage against time. Let's just bring you further down onto the Ferranti here, so you can see a bit more, because I'm going to have to bring this other thing in. Now, you can't actually see one of the chips, pins there, because it's looking a bit with the worse for wear. But what it does is, for example, you can see where I've got the 1 down here. And that is where the baseline is. That's where 0 volts are. And I've got this set to a scale of 1 volt. So for every, if I just put it actually on there, every grid is actually 1 volt. So when I actually put the probe on the 5 volt supply, you will see it jump straight to 5 volts. Whoops. You've got to be careful what you're doing with this damn thing. So you can see 5 volts there. And you can then see what's going on. Like, for example, this is an address line. And you can see what's happening. If I just stop this, what you can see is a very nice digital signal. The highs are up at 5 volts, and there is quite a sharp drop off to 0. So you can effectively see the 1s and 0s of the address stream. So you can see what's going on. And you can also then see what gives on various bits and pieces. Now, this is a relatively modest oscilloscope. The screen is not that big, the resolution is not that big, but I mean, hey, it's all I can afford. Well, for someone who's doing the kind of work that I'm doing, a big expensive oscilloscope would be a complete waste. I'm still learning electronics, and I'm not doing anything on equipment which could actually justify dropping thousands of pounds. This one is a Rigol DS1120E. So that's a Rigol DS11202E. And this one, you can get them best from Rigol themselves if you actually want to get one of these particular oscilloscopes. There is a cheaper one, but for to save £50 against the lower frequency, I determined that it was worth the extra £50. There are hacks, it is said, against the lower oscilloscope, but apparently Rigol may be or have there was talk that Rigol was going to nix the workaround, the hack, with a firmware update. So I determined, you know, the 50 quid was going to be worth it for doubling the resolution, so I forked out on that. But the most important thing is that this is able to tell us exactly what's happening on the data lines, and that's where the problem is. So if we put this probe on one of the data lines, you can see what's going on. Although the logic tester was showing this as pulsing, you can see that this is a real mess. That is not the clean up and down that we were seeing on the address lines, and that's a data line. So basically what's going on here is that the Ferranti is requesting data from the ROM for the processor to process it, but that is way outside what we would expect a clean digital signal, and that's why it's not moving on to the RAM, because it can't actually see the program from the ROM. And if we leave this running, that was data line 6. Yeah, that's data line 6. As you can see, it's a real mess. We move on to data line 5. That is also a mess. We then move on to data line 4, which is also a mess. We move on to data line 3, which again is an utter mess. Then we move on to data line 2, which is a mess. Finally data line 1, which also is a mess. And then on to data line 0, which again is an utter mess. So why is a question that is causing a bit of delay in future videos and processing things, because I'm at my wit's end. This is beyond me, my abilities to try and work out what the hell is happening here, because as you can tell, we've already replaced all the chips on this board, and nothing so far has actually given us anything to work with here. Nothing. In fact, I'm starting to wonder about the power. Let's actually see what's going on with the power. This will show us power over time. This will show us 9 volts, and so I'll need to adjust the scale. And there we are. We've got 9 volts, and if I move this around, what's happening? Nothing according to that. So why the grief? Things are changing on the ZX81, but I don't know why. Now, this is quite a bit of a mystery, and it's causing me no end of grief as to what the hell is going on here. None of this makes any sense at all. The only thing that does make any potential sense is when you start to look at the schematic. These are the 8 data lines, and you can see they connect the ULA, the processor, the ROM, and if we have 2 banks of half K RAM, that's there, and if we have the single bank of 1K RAM, that's there. And that is what's happening to the lines. There's a bank of 470 ohm resistors there, and a resistor pack of 10 kilo ohm resistors there. So, duh. Now, the resistors are used to help to tie the lines and to prevent noise from entering and exiting, if you know what I mean. So the key thing is actually to look at those resistors, and to the best of my mind, this is in a resistor pack, and this is in a one pack, but I do not know what on here could actually affect all these lines simultaneously, other than the chips, and they've all been swapped, so I do not know what's going on. No clue whatsoever. The only thing which could be is potentially the resistor packs or these resistors here. Now if we have a look down, you can see the resistors. Those are the initial 470 ohm resistors that are all 8 of them are there. But there's also the resistor pack which is here, and that connects up 5 volts to all of these lines via 10 kilo ohm resistors. Now I do have a replacement for that resistor pack on the way, but if you know how resistor packs work, this is a bust resistor pack, and this diagram actually, this picture I found on the internet illustrates it brilliantly. You would have the 5 volts coming in, and then it would go through 8 separate resistors, 10 kilo ohm resistors, to each of the lines. Like if you actually connect between 2 of these points, you will therefore find 20 kilo ohm resistance between each of these 2. And because each resistor is a discrete resistor in this bust design, so this is known as a bust network resistor pack, you know, how can a failure on this actually affect all 8 lines? Don't know. All I can do is get some replacements and get a replacement resistor pack and solder it in and see how it works. I've already desoldered this pack and tested it, and to me, to my multimeter with no load on it, it works. I don't know. It's befuddling the crap out of me. I've been pinning out the board for all sorts, and you know, I can't detect any shorts. I can't detect any. I cannot find a fault on this damn thing. It is driving me up the wall, and part of me does not want to simply bin this board as an unsolved project and move on. You know, I want to carry on with this, but what do? I mean, just for the sake of it, I'm actually going to disconnect this, and there is another power pack here, which I'm just going to power in to see if it is actually the power pack. It shouldn't be, because it's a desktop power supply that's going in there, but I'm just going to power this on, and that's going to give me the same result. Slightly different result, it has to be admitted, but pretty much the same result. Now, as the power pack itself is linked up to the 5 volt supply, there is a possibility that something's gone wrong in the power pack, but given how it's constructed, I can't see how all 8 lines, all the resistors in the power pack would go faulty at the same time. It doesn't make any sense to me. But nevertheless, all we can do is try it. This, however, unfortunately, is the only ZX81 motherboard that I've got that is actually socketed. So it's the only one that I've been able to actually swap chips around in to verify whether the chips work or not. I do have one other potential trick up my sleeve, which is to use a signal generator. I do have a signal generator, which means I can remove all these chips from the board, hook a signal generator up to one of the pins and pump a signal in, and then see what happens on one of the pins. And that's pretty much what I'm going to have to do. It's going to be a bit of an arse, but what else can I do? And then apply the 5 volts to see what happens, to see if it is this resistor pack. I mean, the resistor packs will be with me in a few days, so it may just be that I'll just change the resistor pack and see if that alters the behavior. I'm not expecting it to, but it's pretty much all I'm down to. So that's roughly how we're doing this, where we know the chip design, so we know what we should get on each of the pins. We've got a rough guess. In some cases, other people have already done the work for us and produced things like this, so that when you use a logic tester, which for £10, you know, it's a very useful tool. You can very quickly go through these, and I found it very useful. Well, a number of people find it very useful for forums and asking for help. You get hold of one of these sheets, fill it in with your results, post it to the forum, and that gives someone else a handle on roughly what is going on. Like immediately, the RAM and ROM CS would stand out, because the ROM CS would be pulsing, the RAM CS would be either high or low. I think it's low in this case. And to someone who knows the chips better than I do, that would immediately stand out as, oh, something's not wrong. It's not, it's executing trying to execute the code from the ROM, but not the RAM. And that helps you hone down more on what's going on. And you are, it has to be said, and I have been reminded by a few people, this is helping show what the symptom is. The symptom itself can then provide an indicator as to where the cause is. Now you'll notice a few other things in here, 3.25, and there is another one over here which is actually OSC, which is actually a frequency in itself, and we're just about to take a look at those now, because logic testing, as you've seen, it can be a good starting point, and for only £10 ish, thereabouts, it can actually give you an insight into what's going on. And that can be invaluable in putting something together in order to get help on the internet. As it happens, we've got the oscilloscope. So I'm now going to power this back in. Incidentally, this rubber, if I put my probes to continuity, this is rubber, it's electrostatic mat, but there's no continuity on the mat, you know. And if I change it to resistance, you know, it cannot detect. The resistance of this mat is greater than my multimeter can actually detect. So it's perfectly safe for me to fire up these relatively low voltage circuits on this board. And having a flat surface is quite important, because when you're putting chips in and out, it can help greatly to not stress the board while you're doing this and while you're working on it, which is a big bonus. So we're going to take a look at some of these clock signals and how you work them out. The clock on this, there's one on 35, which we've taken a look at. Let's just power on. I'm just going to adjust my scale again. Whoops. I've just knocked the camera there. So I'm going to knock that section of camera video out. And right, we are pretty much all set again. Okay, so I'm going to put this, no, we're actually going to go on to a digital signal first, and the clock is on CPU, is on pin 14. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, that's here. So I'm going to freeze the frame there, run stop, and we're going to zoom in a bit on it. Boom. Now, so we've got this. How do we tell what frequency it's at? Well, we ask for a cursor, and we're going to change the mode to manual, and that allows me the control over 2 cursor points. So I'm going to give cursor control point A, and I'm going to move it to 1 point. So I'm going to move it to the rise there. Now you'll see we've got an axis frequency here, so I'll switch that over to the other one and move that to a similar position. And this is telling me the axis frequency, 3.29 megahertz. Now the actual frequency we're expecting is 3.25 megahertz, and that is a digital clock signal. As you can see, it's going up to its voltage and coming back down again in reasonable time. So we can use a cursor to work out what's going on and to actually figure out the frequency. So now we're going to look at another one. We're just going to, I'm going to grab it, it's on 35. So 40, 39, 38, 37, 36, 35. So that is another one. We'll run stop there. Now that is not a digital signal, that's more like an analog signal, as opposed to a digital one. It's not going up or down, and we're expecting double the frequency here. So if I go to the cursor and go there, I am actually expecting, and we switch over to that cursor, and bring that cursor in, that tells me that we're roughly 6.4 megahertz, and we're expecting 6.5. So we can use the multimeter and the cursor to actually figure out what the frequency is, and to figure out the clock frequency to make sure that it is actually what we're expecting to see. So that's a bonus. So we can use this equipment to figure out what's not happy. Now, as in terms of working out what the hell is going on for this, we've still got, let's get rid of the cursors, mode, auto, off. I don't want that, I want off. Some of this stuff can be pretty a pain in the arse. I want that off. Boom. Mode off. Measure. Right. So we're running. So we can see the mess that is going on one of these data lines. It's quite a bit of a mishmash. In fact, it's not as bad as it was. Oh yeah, it is. We're at the wrong scale. So you can see it's all over the place. But if I go the other side and actually go to the RAM chip itself, I'm just going to look up, this is D6, where is D6? On the BIOS, on the ROM rather. Motherboard Kynar D6 is actually 4 up on here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is D6. Oh, even worse. One of the other problems you've got to notice is on some signals, actually the act of trying to measure it causes grief in itself. So that is D6 there, and that is D6 there. Now that's interesting. D6 here is actually cleaner than it is there. That is a right mess. So I wonder what's going on there. I wonder why we're getting more of a mess at this side of the at that side of the resistors. No, that's the CPU. Do I have the RAM? I should have a RAM here somewhere. I don't. So I don't know where. Oh, D6 on the RAM. Z80 reset D6 is actually 4 up on there as well. So D6 should be around here. And again, it is the same mess. So what's causing this? You see, this is where things, where I am up against it. I've tried changing the chips. Nothing. I've tried checking all the connections for any shorts or anything. I can't find anything. And the other thing in my mind is, why would one short cause the same behavior on all 8 data lines? The only thing that would cause that is either something like a resistor pack going completely faulty, possibly the 5 volts in, but the 5 volts into the data pack is also fine. I can pick that up here if I'm very careful. Just watch what I'm doing. That is the 5 volts that's going into the data pack, and that seems to be perfectly fine. So I'm at a loss as to what is going on. You also have to be careful, because sticking a probe on something in order to measure what's happening can also, on some signals, it can actually alter the measurement. It can alter the behavior of the board, and you never actually know what the board's trying to do at any one time. It's all a game of trying to work all this out. There is one remaining trick up my sleeve, which is to attach a signal generator, take all the chips off the board, attach a signal generator to one of the pins, and see what picks up on the others. I should get a clean signal. If I'm not, then it's obviously that something's gone wrong on the board somewhere. If it does work, then it points at the chips. It points that I've got a completely set of duplicate failed chips, like Or my Ferrantis and the new replacements could have gone tits. You know, and that is the kind of thing that I could potentially be looking at here. I just do not know. This is mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing because I have got no clue as to what could potentially be causing this problem. Yeah. So there you go. There you go indeed. The only other thing that I could potentially do is... oh, that is a thing. That is a test that I could do, actually. I could actually hook up one of these. I will disconnect that and we will see whether hooking up this actually does work. The reason being is because hooking up this should quiet down and silence the RAM and the ROM and replace both of them with its own onboard. Why didn't I think of this before? This is a bit awkward with the camera in its current position. There it is. Now what happens? I get a K. Shit. Z-expand Tomte. My god. Brilliant. That is actually a step forward. That's a step forward. That is absolutely brilliant. Right. That actually says the processor is fine. The Ferranti is fine. The problem is here somewhere. Yeah. That's actually a bonus. The reason this has actually done what it's done is because the Z-expand, I'm just going to switch this off and move it down so you can see it better. Why didn't I think of that before? The Z-expand has its own ROM on board and it has its own RAM on board. So hooking this up, it sends signals to kill these two and to tell them to be quiet. And then when the chips request information, it requests it from this board. So now I know it is not the resistor pack. It's somewhere in here. In a few days, I will probably get an expansion pack, a RAM expansion pack, and that will enable me to quiet the RAM but keep the ROM running, and that will enable me to work out which of the two it is. We are moving forward. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving forward. But fundamentally, this is how this is all hanging together. It's all a matter of using tools to probe the system and find out what gives. Now, yeah, this is interesting. So what would give in one of these or one of those? There's still a fault, but at least now I'm clued in more to where it is. But the purpose of this video was basically to show you the various tools and how you can acquire the various knowledge in order to work out the various chips, how to test the signals on the lines to get what you're seeing, to test things out, and also the limitations of some of the tools like logic testers, and why in something like this things like oscilloscopes can take you a step forward into seeing what's actually going on. But while a logic tester is a straightforward £10 expense, which is relatively justifiable, something like a £400 oscilloscope maybe is a bit harder to justify unless you're really getting into this stuff and you're really getting into the weeds like I am. But yeah, that was a good thought. Never thought that one coming. So yeah, I am a step further forward. I can feed that back to the forums and say, hey guys, guess what? And see where it goes from there, because I've actually tried yeah, not sure what it could be. Right. So yeah, fundamentally here I thought I'd give you an insight into some of the testing equipment and how to use it, and whether you want to invest in any of these things completely depends on you, your needs, and how far you want to go on things. Because when it came to this with swapping the chips, when even that didn't help, I was completely balked. So yeah, there's going to be a further delay while I work out what the hell is going on here and see what gives. So until then, I hope you found this handy. See you on the next video, which hopefully won't be too long, with a better clue as to what the hell's going on here. Until then, take care of yourselves. Ciao for now.